What's up, everybody, and welcome to Health Over Everything podcast, the number one podcast in health and fitness. I'm your host, SoCal Gula.
And I am Steven Z. Today in this episode, we are going to be talking about sobriety. So, Aaron, for you, how long have you been on your sober journey?
Well, I really cut back in 2019, the late 2019. I was doing a little bit of drugs back then. Cocaine would be my drug that I would do, but I never really liked it. So I haven't done that since October of 2019. And the last person I actually did it was with a cop. That's crazy. That at a bar. But anyhow, I haven't done it since 2019. And that's when I really started saying, hey, I'm going to start getting sober. And here it is, 2023, which is basically 4 years later. And I had my hiccups. I stopped drinking for a long time from 2019. October, I didn't drink for 3 months until New Year's Eve. My dad passed away a few weeks before. And on New Year's Eve, I drank one day. So that was in 2020, basically the first day. And then I didn't drink for 6 months after that. Then I kind of got back into it a little bit. I moved out of my hometown. Actually, I moved out of Rancho Cucamonga into a new city. And then at that point, I wanted to drink again. I was like, I should drink with all the people that I have here one last time, go out with a bang, and then move into my new spot and stop drinking then. So I drank, quite a few times, maybe like 10. And then I moved out in November of 2020, didn't really drink much then. And ever since then, 2021, 2022, the last couple of years, I've only drank like 4 or 5 times. So really haven't drank much, but I have drank a little bit. And then 2023, this year, I drank 4 times, but I've been completely sober since I turned 40. That was like a milestone for me. So in August of this year, 2023, I haven't drank anything since, and I haven't smoked anything since, because I would smoke cigarettes every time I drink. So if I drank, I would smoke cigarettes, but I also would smoke weed. So throughout 2019 to now, I would smoke weed in here and there. I would stop, sometimes for 150 days. And then I would be like, oh man, let me get some edibles. I want to just do it one time again. And then I would get back into it. And then eventually I would do some edibles and then go back into smoking again. I'm like, oh, it's not hitting good enough. It's not giving me high enough, because you get tolerant to it. So then I would just start smoking too. So, and then that's what happened in this year too. I started doing some edibles, then I started smoking some, and then it just became, I was doing it all the time again for 4 months. So when I turned 40, August 5th, I turned 40 on August 8th. On August 5th was my last day drinking and smoking. It was like, I'm turning into my 40s. I was like, hey, this is in my 30s. I'm going to start this new decade fresh and clean. So it's been 106 days since I've been completely sober, no drink, no smoke, and I'm doing good. Don't really have an urge for it. Don't want to smoke. And one of my goals is, just not smoke and drink in my 40s. Like, why not? Why do it? I have no urge to do it. Maybe I'll drink one day here and there. Like people say, like, you can have a beer here and there. I don't know, but it depends on what your problem is. If, like I said, if I go to your wedding, I'll probably have a few drinks then. But other than that, I'm sober now. No smoking, no drinking for 106 days and counting. How about you?
Nice. Yeah, I don't even think I'm going to drink on my wedding.
I might.
um,
Might. Who knows?
in March it'll be 3 years from no alcohol. I did smoke weed here and there. Vaping, I guess I don't consider that a drug per se, but it was like an addiction that I got over. And that one's more recent. That's probably been closer to like 3-4 months, no vape. With the vape, I still have the urge when I go out to like settings where I would typically smoke, like a concert or fry. Sometimes I'll go to the bar with my fiance, see a band or something like that. And I'll have the urge still to want to smoke. And
Hmm.
I'll still get those like internal battles with myself where I'm like, oh, you could take one hit. You haven't smoked in a long time. Like one day is not gonna, it's not gonna kill you. It's not gonna make you go back into your old routine, which I do feel like that's just like a psychological trick my mind is trying to play with me. Because kind of like you said too, when I stopped smoking weed first, I think I went somewhere like an amusement park with my nephew. I ended up smoking there, And the next day I was out buying another cart and basically picked up the habit again. It's like I've gotten, maybe not everyone is like that, but for me personally, it's like I can't just, it seems like I can't just dabble in it a little bit. I'm like a all or nothing type of a person. So
So
even like, go ahead.
what was your health journey? Like I kind of explained mine from like because we used to both drink a lot and smoke a
Yeah.
lot, do a little cocaine here and there. That wasn't our
Yeah.
main thing. We barely did that, but here and there we did it. When
Yeah.
people had it. But what was your describe your process of when you drank to like to when you became sober?
Ooh. I probably can't remember the dates, but yeah, just going back from when I was younger, like me and you, we used to freaking party hard, drink probably most freaking weekends, and we would go hard. Like have some probably some crazy nights we'll never be able to remember. um, yeah, I remember there was a few times where I actually tried to quit. One of them was when I was doing my fitness journey and I first started it. I was eating very good and then not losing any weights, and then I realized that was because I was drinking on the weekends. And during my first time quitting, I think I actually went to Vegas and I seen you in Vegas and I wouldn't drink with you. I think you're a little bit pissed off, like, what, we're in Vegas? You're not gonna have a drink with me? I'm like, dude, I'm like, this month I'm not drinking. Like I already planned it for myself. I'm not doing it. So um that was like my first attempt at it. And my first attempt, like I said, I was like, I'm just gonna stop for a month. Like that's all I wanted to do. It wasn't like I didn't plan anything like long term the rest of my life. So I was able to do that month, and then I think I started back up again and kind of fell back into the habit. And it wasn't until more recent, probably I'm gonna say 3 or 4 years ago. So we're in 2023 now. So probably 2019-ish. I just started kind of getting the idea that I did want to stop, and I would stop here and there, but then yeah, I still had that like I don't know, I call them like my demon or that just that mental aspect. When the weekends would roll around, I'd have just a strong urge to drink. And I fell into that kind of routine and habit of telling myself, like, oh, I'll start next week. I'll do it next weekend. Like, I'll drink, this is gonna be my last weekend. And I said that freaking until forever. And I think I got into like, I don't like to call it like a depression, but I call it more of a funk. I was just in this
Yeah.
point in my life where like I just wasn't happy with myself. And in that moment, I kind of felt like I had to do with my drinking. Like I felt like shit after I'd had these crazy hangovers, and I know I just felt like it wasn't really serving me any longer, and I could be better and do better. But kicking the habit was just, like you probably know too, and other people that have tried to stop doing their addictions, like it's hard, especially in the beginning. Like I had to kind of go back and forth,
Yep.
and I'm trying to think. Yeah, I felt like everything kind of came into place. I was watching it was a YouTube video, and it was who was it? That guy Jay is a Jay Shetty
Okay.
and someone else, and they were just kind of talking about the guy was saying something like you have to realize even though like your life has all of these ups and downs, that all of it is kind of for a purpose. All of it is to bring you into this moment, and that kind of made something click for me to make me realize like, well, all the struggles I've had in the past kind of led me up to this point, and it made it seem like it wasn't for nothing. Like all the trial and errors of falling off the horse and getting back on with my sobriety, that it wasn't like for nothing, that I was making progress. And even thought about my dad a little bit, about him passing, and like, before I used to think about it very negatively. And I'm like, no, like in that moment, I was like, no, it happened for a reason. Like it made you a stronger person, it put alcohol on your radar, and everything in that moment kind of came together for me. And I was just like, I'm done. Like that was the moment it kind of clicked over. And I did still like smoke weed and vape after I stopped drinking. That was kind of like, well, I'm not going to quit everything all at once. So I did that for a little bit. And more recently, yeah, I stopped with the weed and the vaping. So decided that it was time to go all in. And, I didn't like feeling like I needed outside chemical in order to make me feel normal or to go to social events. And we could probably talk about that later, how like when you if you're a social drinker, like you're gonna have to, when you do social events, you'll probably have to learn how to be social sober. And
Mm.
that could be a reason for you to like, no, I need a drink because if I'm not drinking, then I can't talk to people. It's like those are the little kind of psychological battles you're gonna have to deal with once you try to embark on this sobriety journey. Sorry, I felt like
Yeah.
that might have been a little bit of a rant.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember 2019, I stopped drinking. And like I said, stopped drinking in 2019 of October. And then in 2021, 2020, New Year's, I drank. And I broke down on Facebook because my dad passed away. So that was kind of embarrassing a little bit. But then I didn't drink for like almost 7 months after that. And I got
You
up
said you left
to,
that video up there too, huh?
yeah, so I could go back and look at it. So it's like, okay, I can remember that day when every New
Mhm.
Year's I look at it again. But also, I remember I was like in day 200, and you were like coming up to day 100. So I think I had a little bit of influence with it too. It's like, oh, like we
Yeah.
just kind of like stopped around the same time, but mine was like a little bit. But you stuck with it, and you still haven't drank at all. I've drank since then, but I also kind of learned how to drink a little bit. Like even if I drank one beer at a football game, I'd be like, oh, I broke my sobriety. But in reality, I'm still pretty much sober compared to like how I used to be drinking like 15 days a week, like just getting blackout drunk every time. So I drink 15
Yeah.
days a week, every time totally blackout drunk, basically 10-hour drink bingers or whatever. I would stop when I would
15,
black out.
15 times a month, right?
Yeah, what'd I say?
A week.
Oh yeah, 15 times a
I'm
month.
like, motherfucker drinking twice a week? Jesus.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Sometimes I'll say the
No
wrong thing.
problem.
But yeah, like my thing would I'd just drink until I would stop drinking that night when I black out. Like that would be the end of me drinking. I wouldn't just like, okay, let's have a few drinks. That's it. And that was
Yeah.
like the problem of it. That was my main problem. Was like I just couldn't, and then I would end up smoking over a pack of cigarettes or something, a pack of cigarettes, close to a pack of cigarettes. So then my dad passed away in 2019, and that was kind of a wake up call. Like, hey, and then I just remember something in my head that my older brother told me one day, who were also addicted to drugs. Like they were addicted to different drugs. But yeah, so I remember him saying like, hey, if you don't stop drinking and drinking like you're doing, like it will kill you one day, especially how you drink. So that was like just in the back of my mind. And then my dad would still smoke weed, and he passed away. It was a lot of other factors besides just that. It was heart disease from lifestyle. But I was just thinking like, oh man, I don't want to do that. I want to rewrite my story. I don't want to live the same story as everyone else. I want to, live a long time. So now I just say, I'm living to 90. I'm living to 90 years old. That's like my thing. I always say to
Nice.
myself, which I should make it even bigger. I should say 100, but I say
Yeah.
living to 90. So then I say like when I make these decisions every day, that like the decision that I'm making day in and day out, will this help me get to 90? So that's just the thing. I'm living to 90. I'm going to live to 90. So if you pick up a beer, will this help you live to 90? You pick up a cigarette or um, marijuana, like, will this help you live to 90? If it's a no, then you should put it away. Don't do it. So that kind of helps me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny too. I was listening to Andrew Huberman recently, and I felt like this is like me and you to a T, where he was talking about like the people that feel like when they do drink, like they get energized and like they're happy and like
Mm-hmm.
they're like you're like the life of the party. Like
Yep.
I felt like that was me, and I kind of felt like that was you too. And
Yeah.
he was saying that those type of drinkers have to be very careful because you're tying in your drinking with this like ecstatic state of like happiness and like just feeling good. And you like feeling good. You like feeling like that. So you drink the alcohol. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like the I think that's why he's talking about those people have to really, really watch out, because some people could just like you said, have a couple of drinks. You can have a couple of drinks now and you're fine, but in the past, we were not like that. We were just blackout drunk. Like I'd be there drinking with you, 3, 4,
Yep.
5 in the morning. Like we should
Yeah.
be in bed a long time ago. We'd be drinking, smoking, acting a fool, talking about life and philosophy, outer space, just random shit.
Yeah.
And
Everybody would like, we would go to a party. Everyone would go to the party, and then they would all leave. And then we would be the last ones up, like every time. And the people like that would stay up with us. And when we got home from the party at my house or whatever, they would eventually stay up with us for a little bit and end up all going to sleep, passing out. And then we would still be up there until the sun come up.
yeah, there's been a lot of nights like that and shit. We'd even like after the parties and everything, before 2 o'clock would hit, like, hey, let's go get some beer. We need it before everything shuts down. We need to go get more beer so we can continue the party. We didn't
Yep.
have like a turnoff switch. It was just like,
Yeah.
let's
That's what I
just
say.
drink
Would
until
have
we pass out.
just drink until I pass out. That's when you were done.
Yeah.
Wake up in the morning with your clothes on and you're like, what the hell happened last night? So why do you think people become so addicted to alcohol? And I know, like you said, because you're a life of a party, which, I loved it. Helped me. I would say like helped me with being sociable. I thought at the time, like, oh, I'm more sociable with
Mhm.
girls or people, or like I felt like alive at the party. I felt really excited and lively and like dangerous a little bit. But what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that too. And then it's like easier to talk to people. So that was one of my big issues. And I think, everyone's gonna have their different reasons of why they do it. Some people, maybe to take the stress off from the day, or you're dealing with the loss of a loved one, and that might be a reason that you kind of accept for you to drink. So I think we're all gonna be different for our reasons in that regard. But one of the reasons or one of the things about like when I stopped was like I had to learn how to be social again. So that was like a part of I think my reason for drinking, because I wouldn't be quiet. Like because when I wasn't drinking, I would just be kind of to myself. Like at the party, I'd be with everyone, but I was more of a listener, and I wouldn't really talk
Yeah.
or like input things. Maybe a small talk here and there, but I wouldn't
Mhm.
have like a full blown on conversation with people. But when I was drunk, like you couldn't shut me up. I'm freaking grabbing you. Hey, I freaking love you.
Yeah.
So I was like a completely different person. And when I became sober, like I had to learn, like, all right, you just can't be all quiet. Like I would try, I literally would tell myself, all right, what would drunk Steven do right now?
Yeah.
Maybe, and maybe I wouldn't be obscene or freaking crazy with what I want to
Mhm.
say, because like drunk Steven, he had no filter. If I wanted to ask you something ridiculous, I would just ask you.
Yeah.
I didn't give a damn. I didn't really think about it. I would just do it. Um, but yeah, I had to learn how to just be more sociable and ask questions and get to know people.
And what about okay, so like what about other things like cocaine? Like why do people do harder drugs like that? Like you think?
Hmm. I think cocaine's one of those drugs too that could just make you stay up all night and party. Like I feel cocaine and alcohol are a good mix, even though like, like you said earlier, we have done cocaine, but it wasn't like something that like I could never understand. Like, how do people get addicted to this?
I
Like,
never even liked it. Yeah. I did it and
yeah,
I hated it. I felt like I was gonna have a heart attack every time.
like I understood like too, but whenever we did it, we would want to do it all night. Like it's one of those
Yeah.
things too. I think like
Where's more?
yeah, they say like the dopamine hit, it hits you
Mhm.
fast, but then it leaves you very quickly, so you want to do more to
Yeah,
get
that's what I
that
was
hit
gonna say.
again.
Like something chemically in your brain once you
Yeah,
hit it.
so you keep needing it and wanting it and wanting it, but once it was done, it was some of those nights too, like, hey, we're done. Should we go get some more? Let's find someone
Yeah.
to get some more. It's like,
It's overdose.
but then after no, after that day, next day I'd wake up, it wasn't like, oh, I want to do cocaine again.
Yes,
So
exactly. I
for
was
me,
never like that.
I didn't really have an addiction to it in that regards, but
I kind of feel like
I guess that,
alcohol is a I kind of feel like alcohol is kind of like a gateway drug with that stuff too. Cause like we'll drink
yeah,
some, like I never did it when I was sober. Like, oh, let me just, but some people do have an addiction of just cocaine at all. Like they don't even drink and stuff. But for me, it was just like, okay, I'll drink. And then I'm like, oh, let's get some or let's do some, like, and then, oh, let's do some more. And then also too, it's like smoking cigarettes. Like I never smoke cigarettes, but when I drink, then I'm like, oh, first thing, like give me a cigarette. Like, so alcohol
yeah,
is kind of like they say marijuana is that gateway drug. I think alcohol is kind of a gateway drug. People don't want to say it, but it's a gateway
yeah. It
drug
makes
to
a lot of
doing other
sense.
drugs. It's a gateway drug to doing smoking, and it's a gateway drug to just doing bad things. Like horrible things that people do when they're on alcohol.
Yeah,
So alcohol is kind of like a gateway drug.
yeah, I could agree with that because there's been plenty of things that I wouldn't have done if I was sober, and wouldn't have said that if I wasn't drunk. So I get that 100%. Um, Going back to your question though, like honestly, I think a lot of people have addictions or things they like to do. It's either because they're trying to numb the pain or because it makes them feel good. Like I think
Yeah,
those are two like probably driving motivators for it.
yeah.
Um because we do not like to feel our pain. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of those areas too where I think for me, this is my thought behind it, is that certain traumatic experiences and certain painful events, like, you need to experience them. Like, I know
Yeah.
it's like almost in our nature to kind of want to run away from it, like, and that doesn't make me feel good. I don't want to think about that, so let me drink, or let me have this, let me smoke, let me do some coke, or whatever your thing is, so I don't have to think about it. But in order to get past it, it's like you do have to think about it, you do have to
Mhm.
feel those emotions, because if you don't, it's going to be stuck with you forever, because you've never fully dealt with it. So you can't move forward because you haven't dealt with your past yet. And I think that is, part of being sober, is that you're going to have to overcome and get familiar with those little demons and those traumatic experiences, because you're not going to be able to move past them unless you deal with them.
Yeah, and like another thing too is like you're saying, people just have. It seems like almost everybody has trauma by
Yeah.
childhood. Even if you're like treated too good, it's like, well, I have trauma because I was treated too good, you know. But like a lot of people have trauma from their childhood or whatever, and like like to me, like sometimes I felt depressed when I was, especially in my early 20s. Oh,
Hmm.
girls don't like me, or um, my dad didn't treat me right enough, or he should have sent me to college. Why didn't they have enough money? Why am I working this job? um why can't I talk to people? So I get depressed. But then it's like you get drunk to mask it. And we talk a lot about like food and nutrition and stuff here, and like stuff like that, like how people mask it with pharmaceuticals. And it's kind of like just a thing to mask like your trauma or the things you're going through in life, and you're doing it with the alcohol, the cocaine, the weed, the cigarettes, or whatever. And then it becomes an addiction in your mind, because these are chemically dependent things, and your body gets like chemically dependent on it. But in
Yeah.
reality, it's just masking the problems. So one way, if you want to get sober, you're going to have to be like, hey, I'm going to get sober, but I'm going to also being now I'm going to have to face these traumas and these life realities, face to face, like right head on. So then you actually could work on the root problems and the root causes, and then
Exactly.
it becomes better, because you're not going to cure your depression, you're not going to cure your ailments and your trauma and your past life and your childhood or anything like that through masking it with alcohol or drugs. You're going to heal it through healthy ways, and confronting it straight on, either by learning, getting more educated, going out there and getting some help, going to people that's been through it before, talk to them about it. And just there's many different ways, but that's how you're really going to cure your root problems, is just getting sober and dealing with it sober and head on.
Yeah. And I think to elaborate on that a little more, I think an aspect of it too is around those kind of traumatic events, or these pain areas in your life, you tend to have a certain story that you tell yourself about them.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think if you could just like a slight shift in your perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll give you an
Yes.
example. Like, when my dad passed, I always considered that like a bad thing. I've always associated it with like that was such a painful event in my life. And it wasn't until 20 years after he passed that it kind of clicked for me that, like, no, like, him passing the way he did was actually a good thing, because now you realize that maybe this alcoholism runs in the family, and you're
Mm-hmm.
headed down the same path as your dad. And if you don't want to do that, like, you have the keys now in your hand to change it. Like, you have to put it in the car and turn it on, but now you have the keys. Where if you would have passed in a car accident, maybe I would have been like, oh, I don't have a problem with my drinking. Like, he drank, he never died from it. He died in a car accident, so I'm good. And so him passing the way he did later in my life, I was able to see as a positive. And maybe I think a lot of the problems that we do have is just our perspective about it. Like, we like to play the victim card, poor me, poor this, but that keeps you in like this victim mentality. It's like you have it within you to gain control of your life and quit being the victim. And part of that is taking responsibility for where you are currently at. Because if you're blaming someone else or something else, like, you're always going to be the victim. You're not going to be able to change if you don't take responsibility.
Yes, taking responsibility is definitely number one. And that brings me to, a lot of people have enablers. They have family
Mhm.
members that love them and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to just always take care of them and other things like that. But a lot of people enablers are friends, their environment. So sometimes you have to take the responsibility to get out of realize who are your enablers? Who are the people that are saying that it's okay? They still love you how you are. Like, I understand that you're like this. It's just who you are. This is kind of like what you are and who you are. No, you have to
Mhm.
realize like, hey, this is not where I want to be. I don't want to do this. And these people are enabling me, even though they love me. So maybe I should have to get away from that or move out of that town or move out of that household, move away from these people that are being nice to you and enabling you. Like there's a lot of enablers out there. Like they also friends and stuff. They don't want to lose you as a friend because they're doing the same thing as you. So they're
Yeah.
like, oh, so you got to get away from them too. So you got to environment is a big part of becoming sober as well. Like I myself moved out of my hometown away from all the people that I used to hang out with and drink and stuff, and then I moved to another town. Well, that one had a bar right across the street with people I still knew there, and I ended up going there.
Uh,
And then now I moved to another town with my new roommate, and she supports me and stuff like that. Was the sobriety part of it. So now it's a better environment. So it's a lot easier to become sober because now I'm in this environment of people that she tells me don't drink, don't drink that much,
yeah.
don't let the old you come back, stuff like that. So it's just the environment you got to get it away from the enablers as well.
Yeah, too. I think you made a good point by saying the people that are enabling you, they don't necessarily dislike you or anything. They may
Yeah.
love you, but when you're trying to change, they could fear losing you. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, I can't let Aaron change. Like, what if like he doesn't want to be my friend anymore because he's sober, and now that I'm drinking still, like maybe our friendship will crumble, and people will do all kinds of things to keep their own life comfortable. And if something's going to jeopardize that comfortability, like, subconsciously, they might try to hold you back in fear of losing you. So I
And
like
also
that
too,
point
like
too.
someone could, it's not even losing you. Sometimes it could be like your mom or something. Like there's lots of children out there that still living with their moms, adult children even, and
Hmm.
then they're just like, give me $20, give me $50. And the mom knows or the dad knows that they're gonna go buy drugs with it, but they still
Yeah.
give it to them. Why are they doing that? They should be like, no, I'm not gonna give you because you're gonna buy drugs. Well, then the kid will get mad at them, be like, I don't love you, you hate me, and stuff like that. And they have unconditional love for their kids, so they just feel bad. And what do? They give their kid the money or whatever because they're
Yeah.
like, I don't want him to hate me. Like he said he hate me. Like I can't have that. It just hurts them so much that they just give him the money anyhow and says, well, as long as they're happy or whatever, doing what they're doing, and then they go out there and do drugs, and then sometimes they end up dying, and then
Yeah.
then now you don't have your kid there at all. So that's another kind of enabling that happens too. So but as the person, as the addict or whatever trying to get sober, you have to realize that you're doing that to your mom or your dad or your family members, and you have to be like, no, I'm not going to do that to them anymore. I'm not going to maybe even move out from them. Say, hey mom, hey dad, I'm moving away for a while because I'm going to get sober, or you're going to be proud of me or something. They're not going to like it, but in the end, this is what you're going to have to do because like you said, you have to take responsibility for your own sobriety. That's the only way. Like no one's going to do it for you. No one's going to um not, you're putting the stuff in your mouth, you're taking the drink, you're taking the hit, so you got to take responsibility.
Yeah. It's funny when you were saying that, it made me. Have you seen that movie, Basketball Diaries, with Leonardo DiCaprio?
No, I haven't.
And there's a scene where he's asking his mom for money because he wants to get his fix, and she basically tells him no, and he starts calling her a bitch and I
Yep.
hate you. But
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it is. Like as a parent, I feel like if there's parents out there, well, obviously there is parents out there, but if you're a
Yep.
parent, like you can't give your kid everything because I'm trying to think of the way to say it. Like my son, he would probably eat candy and junk food all day if I let him. Like I'm trying
Yeah.
to instill good habits into him. So I can understand how, like, if it would make sense in your example, like, oh, I'll just give him the money so he stays, happy. He doesn't yell at me, and our relationship is fine. But to enable someone in that regard, like in the long run, you're just hurting them. Like you're gonna have to
Yes.
probably go through that conversation where you're like, no, I'm not giving you the money, and deal with that issue kind of separately. Like, all right, we're gonna go through a period where he hates me, this, that, and the other thing. But eventually, hopefully, he
What's
becomes
best for them.
sober.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we could rebuild our relationship. Um, but it could also be that, if he doesn't get it from you, he might look to someone else. He might get into stealing. So
Yeah.
it's a slippery slope. But
Well,
at the
that's where the
same time,
self responsibility comes from. Like you
yeah,
have to do it yourself. Even if you say I hate your mom or your dad because of it, you're gonna go get it from someone else. But at the end of the day, like as a parent, you got to be like, hey, well, at least I'm not contributing to the bad parts. But I also think like we're kind of conditioned a little bit. We condition children in the beginning to giving them whatever they want. If you're giving your kid whatever you want, like I say, you gotta let them have this patience a little bit, like this patience to have something. It's kind of like the work now, play later kind of thing. Like, okay, like I want this candy, like they'll eat junk food all day, like you're saying. Well, like say like you could do everything good, and at the end you could have one piece of candy at the end of the week or whatever, like, or you could have one treat. Like you got to go 3 days before you can have one piece of pie or something like that. But if you're sitting there
mhm,
letting your kid have all this, the chocolate milk in the morning and then the ice cream at night, like just let them eat a whole tub. Like here's a tub of ice cream, just eat the whole thing. Just have as many chips as you want. Then they start getting this addictive personality where they just like, okay, I don't just take 2 bites. I eat the whole thing. And then I'm like,
yeah,
now I do it again. Now I want more. Now I need, then you need something stronger and stronger and stronger. So this is just starts with the food and all these other things that you're giving them, the iPad or whatever, all these addictive things. And then by the time they turn to an age where they're able to meet people and buy things, then they start doing other things like, oh, let me get a little bit of weed, let me get a little cigarette here. And then they're like, well, now I need more. I want to smoke like a whole pack of cigarettes per day. Then it's like, oh, let me get something more. So it becomes this pattern where it's like almost impossible to break. And it all starts from just letting them have too much as a child. Like you got to put some restraints on them from way back then. So
yeah.
like when you're an adult, let's say, and you have your adult kid yelling at you saying I hate you and all this stuff because you're not giving them money for drugs, does that go all the way back to their childhood when you gave them too much stuff back then as well?
Yeah, it could be. And, I think as a parent too, it's like you want to give your kids as much love and nurture them as much as you can. But at the same time, you have to let them struggle a little bit too. I'm like, you can't solve all their problems for you or for them either, because
Mhm.
then they don't grow as a human being. If you're always there to get them out of a tight thing, like to me, I think you're stealing their growth from them.
Yeah.
And I
You gotta
remember
learn.
with
Yeah.
my
You gotta
son.
learn. They gotta learn how to problem solve pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember my son when he was younger, he would always want, we'd be doing like a drawing together. We'd watch a YouTube video and the video would be explaining how to do the drawing. And so I would do it with him and he would always get mad, like yours looks better than mine, Dad. And I'm like, can you do it for me? And I'm like, no, no, no. I was like, I can't do your drawing for you. I'm like, Stevie, I'm like, I have like 8 times the years of experience on Earth. Like I have so much more experience with drawing than you do. I was like, of course I should be better. But if I do the drawing for you, I'm like, you're not going to get any better with learning how to draw. I'm like, that's how you get better. He's like, you need to practice. So I kind of drill that into his head, like, and maybe I'd help him out here and there, but I would at least tell him, like, I want you to practice. Like, you try, and if you can't do it, I'll help you out. But you need to learn. That's what life's
Yeah.
about. We're all learning. Like, even at 40, life's still
Yeah.
a learning process. I don't think it's going to be ever ending. Like,
No.
learning is how you grow and how you evolve. Like you just don't want to be the same person you were a year ago or
No, you don't. Ed in my life talks
exactly.
about that a lot. You always want to
Yeah.
be better than yourself last year. But like with sobriety too, like let's talk more about that.
Okay.
There's a lot more culture too. Like you were talking about, I think to me once, the culture of like drinking, like it just seems like it's acceptable. Like you look on billboards that are everywhere. You don't see meth
Mhm.
billboards. Why don't you see
Yeah.
billboards of people doing meth and being like, oh man, like girls like half naked, looking all beautiful, like having a great time. Like that's what like almost like you think in your head that you look like when you're drunk or whatever, but
Yeah.
you don't really look like that. You look like kind of slobby, slurring your words and stuff. But why don't we have like people doing cocaine on billboards or like on football commercials? And if you look at movies, everybody's smoking, everybody's drinking. Like almost every TV show or like every movie I'm doing, like they're like having a drink or whatever. So it just subliminally gets in people's minds. We don't have a culture of people being sober. So it's like the whole culture is like, oh, let's have a glass of wine, let's have a drink. Like, why isn't it the other way around? So that also is a battle with people that are trying to be sober is that they have this whole entire culture against them. And then so now they're watching TV and then they just get triggered over and over again, especially if you were already an addict once.
Yeah. And it's so easily like accessible too. It's like there's a liquor store out on almost every corner,
Mm-hmm.
at the gas station, the grocery store, and like you could get it anywhere. I think it's probably one of the most damaging like drugs out there because it's so socially acceptable.
Yeah.
You get into these ruts where you're just drinking your freaking life away and you don't really
Yeah.
ever question why, because it's like, I don't know, I guess it's probably the history of humanity. We just
Yeah.
gotten into a point where it's a drug that we just all kind of agreed upon that it's okay to do. Like,
Yeah, and you're not going to get rid of alcohol. It occurs naturally. Like you just ferment fruit in order to make it. So you're not going to get rid of alcohol, but education, support, and just having a culture that, hey, this is not the good stuff, is would be a lot better. Like people are still going to drink. People still want to drink, or like so you're never going to get rid of that. We don't advocate that or anything. Like, but there's just culture, like the whole entire culture. Hollywood pushes it, sports pushes it. They have a lot of money, so they obviously they have a lot of advertising. It's not illegal to like other drugs or whatever. Like I don't even think most drugs should be illegal because I'm more of a freedom kind of person. But
yeah,
just it's about education. It's about like also like just learning and helping people out, just like through example as well. Like if you don't drink, you're gonna teach your kid like, hey, maybe I don't drink, like, and then don't hang out with these people. They kind of like teaching them like you can't hang out with these kids because they are a bad influence because this is the path they're going to go on, and you kind of teach them. A lot of people don't even talk to their kids about this stuff. They just have them figure it out at school or whatever with their friends and other kids. If you're 15, you're learning stuff from a 15-year-old how to smoke and how to drink and stuff. Like no, you should, the dad and mom needs to educate the kids, like, and have the culture and be like, or you're watching a football game and a beer commercial comes on, be like, hey, look, that's not really how it is when you're drinking. It's more of like this, and you could go on a YouTube video and show somebody like this is what really happens like when you're drinking. This is make believe. They're trying to sell you money, so the kid kind of gets an awareness about it. Or even
yeah,
some people might even say like, I don't know if this is good or not, like when you turn 17, 18, maybe 18 or 19, they let their kids drink with them, like, oh, let's have a drink. So that you can, here, now you can learn just to have one or two, like at the campfire if you're camping, instead of over here with your friends, like just get belligerently drunk, like trying to like teaching them how to manage it kind of as well. But, just like, okay, if you can have one or two, but I don't know if that's the greatest idea, but some people might do that.
yeah. I can see that being a pro and a con. Like maybe in the sense, like I remember my dad, he let me have a drink at the house before I was 21, and he basically was like, "Well, I'd rather have you drink here at the house and be safe instead of driving around and going and getting drunk somewhere else and then have to drive home." Like so, and I don't know. Like it could be a pro con. It's
Oh
probably a
yeah,
pro
definitely.
that
It
I
could it
wasn't
could
out
lead to a road of
drinking and
disaster.
driving.
I don't recommend that at all. But
Yeah,
if your kid's like saying like if you're talking to your kid and educating them about it, like I'm talking about in the previous example, and they say, "Hey, Dad, I kind of want to experience this." It's like, well, let's do it under a controlled environment so you can see
yes,
how it is, But maybe that could be something. But but you could explain to them you got to educate them and explain to them all the bad things that happen with it. Like my parents used to always tell me, don't smoke weed. It's bad. Don't tell anybody that we do it. But they were smoking weed every day. So it's like, okay, if
yeah,
it's that bad, why are they doing it? It couldn't be that bad. So it's like, you got to live through
yeah,
example because you could tell your kids what to do all day long, but they're going to see what you do. And that's the number one thing. They see what you do and they're going to be like, okay, well, my mom does it. I'm doing it,
yeah. And it probably, at a young age, your mind is very impressionable. So
Yeah.
probably a lot of it too is just like a subconscious thing. Like if I was getting sloshed every weekend and my son sees me like that, he sees me with the bottle, like he knows like the color of like beer, he knows like that's an adult drink.
Mm-hmm.
But even at his age, he already knows that, that is an adult beverage. And if you see that enough, like eventually he's just going to get into your subconscious where he's like, I see my dad drinking the adult drinks. And at the end of the night, he's crawling around on the floor. He's throwing up. He's doing this. He's doing that. Like I might not be directly telling him to do it or not do it, but it's going to influence his subconscious to a certain degree. And maybe when he gets older, he's like, well, yeah, my dad always did it. Like, it's
Yeah.
fine. Like, he
He
wouldn't
still
do
had
it
a
if it was
house. He still had a
bad.
job, like
Yeah, he still was able to take care of me. We had a roof over our head. We had food and all the necessities in life.
yeah.
But
Or they're just saying this is how it is. Like this is just how all families are. This is what families do, and this is what I gotta do.
mhm. Because I would see my dad, he was drinking all the time. So I've never really thought about it. If is that why I never really thought anything about it really? Like if it was bad or if it was good, I just kind of was something that I did and made me feel good. But
Mhm.
he would hit that was my dad's thing. He would come home from a day of work and then make himself like a cocktail. His
Yeah.
was some cheap vodka and 7 Up or Diet 7 Up or Diet Coke. That was like his thing. And on the weekends, he would get drunk and work on his cars. Like that's my dad was like a fix it up type of a guy. So, but he would always have that drink with him, and
Yeah. That's
that
crazy
was
because
just
my,
like
my dad never
his
drank. Like my
routine.
mom and dad never drink. I seen him drink like, he'd have one beer here at a Sizzler or something, but that was like once every year or something. It was never, he never drank, never seen him drunk, but they smoked weed a lot. So I seen that. So it's kind of weird. Like when I turned 17 and I started drinking my first drink at Maybelline's house, our friend, um, it was kind of like, oh, I found something that was really cool. It got me like going. And then it was more of like a party thing. It like made me
Yeah.
feel good, made me like talk to people, but I had no education about it as well. Like no one really told me like, hey, if you're going to do this, it's most likely that you're going to fall into you could fall into a spiral and you're not going to achieve your goals and stuff like that. Like, or tell me like, hey, you shouldn't hang around these people or anything like that. It was more like, this is what everyone did. This is what my peers are doing. It's fun. And then we ended up going to parties where there's like 50 fucking people that we knew there. So it's like just a normal thing. And then it turned into like just a normal thing, like for a while, for years and years and years. And then tell you start turning 30 and you're like, oh man, everyone else is like having kids and doing all this stuff. And I'm still over here at this bar drinking. Like it feels like you're not growing with everyone
Mhm.
else. And that's when it's like, oh man, maybe I have a problem here. Like, and then just the hangovers and stuff too. Like it's just crazy. Like that's why I eventually stopped. But at first it was, who knows why I drank, but it was more like just maybe I wasn't educated enough. Maybe it was just the peers, the group of people I was hanging out with or what. But it is what it is. I ended up drinking and becoming an alcoholic pretty much.
Yeah. Maybe now that you're bringing it up, maybe that is what we need more for like the youth, because obviously like we know what it's like to drink, but if you're 17, 15, 16, 17, you've never had a drink, like you don't know what to expect. You've seen in the movies, everyone's at a party, they're drinking, they're having a good time, they're having sex at the end of the night, like it's all good for the
Yeah.
most part in like a movie setting, but that's not the reality of it. Like, it can be fun and certain people might be able to have one or two and then just simply enjoy that. But there's the dark side of it too, especially when you use it to a point where you start to become dependent upon it. Like, I can't have fun if I don't have alcohol. Like, I
Yes,
feel
that's
like
how I was.
that's where you start to get into trouble is anything that you want to enjoy doing. It's like you need alcohol in order to make it happen. Like, I don't enjoy doing this. Like, is there going to be alcohol there? Like, I can't go to Disneyland if I can't drink. I can't go to the park unless I have my thermos with my drink with me. Like, that's when it starts to become like a problem.
Yeah, and then to just bring up something a little different here, the girl from In and Out, right? The owner, Lindsay
Mhm.
Schneider, she has it's not just alcohol. Like her whole family was alcoholics. Like I think her grandpa and her dad, they both like died or something. I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly, so don't quote me, but definitely her family died of alcoholism and opiates, like pills, pretty much. And then she just had a recent family member that died. She said that he stopped. Uh, he was addicted to like these pills, opiate pills, and stopped for 3 years. He had a problem with it, stopped for 3 years. He went and got his tooth extracted. And a lot of people say, like, why is they giving him opiates? He should be really, but he got an opiate after his tooth got extracted and he got hooked again to it again. And then just recently
Yeah.
died. And he was very young. So, and I know somebody too, like somebody that was close to my brother. She ended up doing all these drugs, went to rehab, trying to get sober, came back out, started it again, ended up passing away because the dose was too bad. And we also know someone else, our friend, mutual friend of us, I want to say names, but her baby daddy, boom, same thing. He's doing heroin, stopped for a long time, moved to a different new area, and started doing heroin again, just did a dose and died. Like, so it's going back to the stuff, like, is a big problem to a lot of people. They'll stop and they'll go back to it. And then that's when they end up dying because they're going back to the same dosage. So it's just,
Yeah.
it's just kind of heartbreaking, but it's like, a lot of people were trying and struggling so hard to get sober, and they do, and they get sober for years, and then they end up going back to it, and boom, and then they end up passing away. Amy Winehouse is another one that died of it,
Yeah.
too. But just insane, like how many people and lives it's taken. So that's another education that you could teach your kids and everybody else. Like, even going back to it, it's like you think like, oh, I'm fine. I haven't done it this long. I'm fine. I could do it again. You do it again, and then you end up passing away.
Yeah, that's the thing too with like opiates. If I've never really gotten into
Me
that,
neither. I've
so
never done opiates.
I
No,
don't know how
no, I
dosages
never
work.
want to.
But if it's like anything else, like alcohol, your body builds a tolerance to it. So if you quit and you're like, this is what I was doing, and you quit for X amount of time and then you go back to it, like that tolerance goes way down again. But you remember the dose, like, oh, I was always smoking an eighth of weed, so I'm gonna start back with an eighth of weed. And when
Mm-hmm.
you go back, like your body's just it can't handle it, like it's not used to it, and you freaking end up dying. Like, and I'm sure most people aren't thinking like, oh, this could be my last hit ever. You just, I'm
Yeah.
going back to my old dose. So I've also, I've known someone personally who died that way as well. So it's a real issue. Like
Yeah, I
it's
think we all
crazy.
know somebody. Like almost everybody knows somebody that passed away from drugs or alcohol.
Yeah, it's a wild one.
That's crazy too. It's
Yeah.
just like, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's wild. The wild one with opiates too, because it's such like an addictive chemical that that's kind of why people keep coming back because it makes you feel a certain way. But damn, yeah, got me
Yeah,
thinking about my
so
friend a little bit.
yeah, being sober, it just, it's the way to go. And then like there's people out there that's always been sober, never drink, never smoke in their life. And like I can't believe it. It's like I would like to get one of those people on this podcast and just be like, hey, like how was it? Like what was it? Was it your childhood? Was it your upbringing? Was it your education? Did you see other people? Did you just not like it? Because like even with meth, like my some of my family members got into meth, like, and that was a horrible drug. They ended up having a heart attack. One of them did, and they're still alive, but they like ruin their life. Like it just, they end up stealing, they end up going to jail, like, and all this stuff because of these drugs. And it just ruins the family, like the whole connection of the family kind of until they get off of it. But it's just, like when I was younger, I started working construction when I was 15, and I was working with a bunch of meth heads. Like almost everybody in construction was doing meth, and I seen a lot of them older. They were like 40, and here I am 15 working out there. And I'm like, oh man, you're a loser. You're still out here working, like taking orders from younger people like me. I would tell them what to do at 18. Like
Mhm.
I'm telling you what to do and you're 40. Like, how is this possible? It's because you're on meth. Like, or when I was 15, I seen them getting out of jail. Like they have no teeth, their hair is gone, because meth ruins all your nutrition because you don't eat. So then your hair falls
Yeah.
out, your teeth fall out, all this other stuff. And I seen all this stuff. And I was just like, what do you do? Because I'm never doing that. I never want to act like you. So just by seeing it firsthand, I knew I never wanted to do that. But I never seen my parents do alcohol. And so my first experience of it was party, having fun with my people, like my 15-year-old friends and stuff. So maybe I just related to alcohol a little bit different as a different thought. Like, hey, maybe this is fun instead of meth was like, oh, this is fucking tragic. Like, look at these people that ruined your life. You're horrible. Number one advice, do not do meth, like, so it's just kind of a thing. And I never did coke either until I was like 27. I did a little bit because my ex-girlfriend was like, oh, if you don't do it with me, I want to go do it with some other guy and leave you. So I was like, then I was the first time ever doing it. And so I kind of forced my hand a little bit and I did it with her, which is a horrible thing for her to do. But there we go. Then now I'm doing that now, so it's like, as soon as you do it, you could get on it. So it's like, what is it like to just never do it? I can only imagine, but we got to get someone on here about that.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you have never drank or smoked or did anything, message us if you want to come on here. That'd be an awesome conversation to have with
Yeah.
someone because I do not know anyone like that who has never drank, who's never smoked. Like everyone I know is they're doing something. Like
Yeah. And I have met some people like that. Like a couple people I've heard of just randomly say, yeah, I've never done it. I'm like, what? But it's just like, no, I didn't know them personally.
it's almost like in today's society, like why not? What's your problem? Why?
Yeah. It's like what is wrong with you? Like you don't like to have fun? Like that's what like people say. Like, oh, you must be fun at parties. I'm like,
Yeah.
was that what life's all about? Just partying? And it's like going places and doing like going to bars and stuff. Is that what life's about? Is that the whole fulfillment of your life is to party and have fun? I don't care if I'm good at parties or not. You
Yeah.
could do so many other things in life. You could build
Yeah, that's
a family. You could build like hobbies. You could build a business. You could go out and do healthy stuff. You play tennis. You could play sports. You could hike. Like there's so many different things you get fulfillment in life than just, oh, you're fun at party. You're not fun at parties because you don't drink. And then it like public shaming is a huge thing. Like people like that's another thing with kids and stuff. Like, and when you're getting younger, or even in your adolescence, or when you're like 20s or something, people could just be like shame you, kind of, well, you're no fun. Like I don't want to hang out with you. You're lame. You're a loser because you don't do this
you're
stuff,
not
and then you end up doing it. So that's another thing we got to stop in this culture.
yeah. It's funny too that, now that we're talking, I think we already hit upon it a little bit, but it is a cultural thing that like if you don't drink, it's weird like
Mhm.
to people. And
Yeah,
whenever I tell people like, yeah, I don't drink anymore, I always feel like I get some sort of like they try to ask me more questions about it just because I think it's not as common as it is just to drink.
yeah. We just went to a birthday party recently, and I was sitting there at the table. Me and you both went, and like they were taking shots of like tequila, and the guy like he sees me and my friend, another friend, and him there. So there's four people there. So he just
Hmm.
automatically makes four shots, and he's like comes over there and just hands them to everybody. I'm like, oh no, I don't drink, and he looks at me like, what? Like he just automatically just think, oh, there's a person there, they must drink, they're here. I was like, no, I
Yeah.
don't drink, and he was like, what? Like just he didn't say anything, he just gave me like an eye, like what the hell? He's like, I guess I'll just have two then. And he took two shots, but yeah, but it's just like kind of weird for people, but it's like, you feel so much better.
Yeah, in the long run, I would agree that I've never felt better being sober. It's like it's nice not waking up with these crazy hangovers, especially as I got older. When I was young, I could wake up, I feel fine, I could just start drinking again. But now that I'm 40, no, 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 no. Even when I started getting into my 30s, I'd have like 3, 4 day hangovers, and
Yeah.
it sucks like dedicating so much of your life and your days to feeling like shit because you wanted to have like a weekend of fun.
Yeah, I
Like
think
that
Barack
got to the
Obama even said
point.
that too. Like Barack Obama's like, oh, I stopped drinking and smoking because when early in his life, he's like, because I realized how much time I was wasted. And I think he still drinks beer and stuff. Like he might smoke too, knows, but he said that, like basically like how much time is being wasted that you could be like when you're out, how much time are you wasting traveling to the spot, drinking and hanging out when you could be doing productive things? Like most people are stuck in the rat race. They're like, oh, I'm stuck in
Yeah,
this rat race. The corporations and or the businesses are like taking advantage of us, but then I'm gonna go waste all this time spending this energy and money and stuff that you just worked for,
yeah,
drinking. Yeah, it's expensive. One drink could cost $10. $6, $10. They add up over time, and you're spending all this energy, time and energy. Time is money, and then for what? To like just basically keep you in the rat race. So it's like you could be using all that time to get out of the rat race instead of complaining about it and
yeah. I think too. I
getting
think
away from
you're
it.
also kind of sacrificing a bit of your safety because obviously, if you're staying home or you're doing something else, I feel like being out till 2 is like you're making it more likely for you to get hit by a drunk driver.
Definitely,
You're making it more likely to get some sort of confrontation with the drunk person because they're
mm-hmm.
belligerent. They don't like the hat that you're wearing. Like
Get
drunk
stabbed.
people are, yeah, yeah, they're crazy, and certain
We've
things
even
will
been to
just set them
Riverside a
off.
couple times where they're shooting in the parking lot.
Yeah, shooting, stabbings. There's like I feel like after we stopped drinking, things got even more crazier because we used to go out to like TJ and get drunk and when we were
Yeah,
18 because you could drink over there at
people
18.
take advantage of you when you're drunk because you're like, I was drunk one day in Hollywood. Someone's like, oh, I need change for $100 bill. And I'm like, oh, I only got 80 on me. He's like, oh, that's fine. That was a fake $100 bill. So you just
Mm.
get taken advantage of really easy as well, that way as well.
It's like
Being
I heard
sober is just
some
so much better.
Yeah, I heard somebody say something recently that was like nothing good happens past 10.
Yeah, like I know Tom
I
Coughlin used to say that, the Giants Super Bowl winning coach. He would say, like, I tell these guys, because he's like an 80-year-old man talking to
yeah.
20-year-old football players. And I tell these guys all the time, nothing happens good after 1 o'clock. There's nothing gonna happen. Go home, go to sleep, and concentrate on your football career. Don't be going out there
Yeah.
because then problems are gonna happen. You might lose your whole entire career because of it.
Yeah, that's crazy too. Especially like, I hate to admit it, but I used to drink and drive quite a bit. And, it could
Yeah,
have
me too.
been a situation where it could have been the other driver's fault, but that person be sober. And just because I had some drinks in me, if that person dies, then, you're going to jail for manslaughter essentially because you have alcohol in your system.
Yeah, and
So
sometimes you
that's
feel
another
invincible.
yeah, that's another thing that when I was younger, like I never considered any kind of repercussions of my actions. I was just young, dumb, doing whatever I wanted. I'm having fun. I'm drinking, talking to girls, doing, just having a good time with it. And
Yeah, there's
yeah,
football player, Raider football player. Like when you get drunk, sometimes you feel like you want to drive faster. Sometimes like I used to do it too, drive fast, run red lights while drinking. It's just like, it's a horrible thing. I wish I would have never done it. Like I regret it, but you move on and you become
yeah.
better. But yeah, he ended up speeding and ran into somebody, ruined, killed the girl and their dog. Now he's in jail because of it. Like, you're so drunk. Imagine you're so drunk and then you get in a car accident, you probably knock out and you just wake up and now you're in jail. And you're like, oh, this is where I'm going to be at from now on. Your whole life's gone.
Yeah, I remember, didn't you get your freaking truck stuck on that train tracks? I remember we were all fucking freaking out about that.
Yeah, but I was sober that day. That's when like
All
before I
right.
started like drinking heavily. 'Cause I started drinking when I was 17, but I didn't start drinking heavily until I was like 20. That's when I really started going like just drinking all the time. But that was before that. I was just sober and I was just trying to drive fast, trying to be because everyone was complaining about some other things. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just drive fast right here. And I ran into crashed my car into the pole.
Oh
I was just
fuck. I
being
think you're
young and stupid. I was like
like
18.
your fucking seatbelt got stuck too. You couldn't get out on the train tracks.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
that
crazy.
time, huh?
Yeah.
Fucking all stupid shit. See, that might have been just being young and dumb.
Yeah, that was just young and dumb. I was like
No, no,
18 years
no
old, just started
alcohol
driving.
involved.
Yeah, that's why
Um,
insurance rates are so high for people that are 18 because you just drive dumber because like, when you're young, you don't really think of consequences as much as you do when you're older. You see people pass away and die, you have
100%.
more life experiences. So you see things, like when you're young, you don't see that. So you're just like, oh, no, like I can do anything.
All right. Let's switch this up a second. Let me ask you a question. If you were to give somebody who's young, they're trying to switch their life and become sober or even more sober, maybe just cut back a little bit. What is like one piece of advice from your experience that you would give them to kind of help them out in that process?
Oh man, I think it's hard to say this to people, but I think number one thing is like your environment. You have to basically get rid of your whole entire environment. Like everyone that's around you that's helping you to do it, like just you might have to be lonely for a while. Like, you
Mhm.
might have to move. Like if I would have moved a lot younger to a new spot and really try to be sober, like if I really wanted to, because that's one time I didn't really want to. So you have to
Mhm.
really want to at first. Like first thing you have to do is you have to really want it. It's like always everything's with the mind, starts with the mind. You have to really want it. And then when you do, I would say you have to move out of your environment, maybe even move into a new city because people do get comfortable where they're at, no matter what. Like we're comfortable beings. Once we find comfort, we stay into it. So you're gonna have to get uncomfortable and you're gonna have to move into a new city, basically stop talking to your friends, maybe even start a new social medias, stop so you don't have the same people and just block everybody, maybe not even have social media at all for a while and just let
Okay.
everyone that you do talk to and know like, hey, I'm being sober and that's all there is to it. Like just make 100% decision and just come and go into it thinking you're going to win. Like there's no room for failure. I'm not going to lose. Just be so confident I'm going to do this. And I think the biggest thing is environment, especially if you're younger. Just get away from everybody and then start a new sober life somewhere else and start meeting new connections of people that do not drink. So just basically ask people, do you drink? If they say yeah, then just don't even start the connection at first of that new person. Like, go like do like other things, go to the gyms or like I go to the gym, I go hiking, I go running. Most people there might even drink still, but just meet more likely they're into health, people that waking up
Yeah.
early. So people that are drunk all the time, they're going to be not waking up early. So go places that people are waking up early and doing things early and then
Yeah.
just make new connections. But I think a lot of it is first, you have to want it. You have to get that mindset of like, I really, really want it. Go into it thinking knowing you're going to win. There's no room for failure. Don't even think that you're going to fail and then change your environment. I think that's the number one thing.
Nice. I think those are some good tips, especially the mindset. Like that's gonna be a big factor into it. And then also what you said is you gotta want it. You can't just like, it'd be cool if I was sober. Like
Yeah.
that is already like you're not gonna do it if you don't want it bad enough. And I think to add to it, like go into it knowing that it's probably going to be a challenge, and that's where
Yes.
how bad you want it comes into play, and that's when your mindset comes into play because your mind will be tested. So be prepared for the challenge of your mind playing all these tricks on you, saying, "Oh, you can have one drink, you can have
Yep.
one cigarette, you could do it a little bit, start next weekend." Enjoy your life, you're young, like you're going to have all these little mental battles that are trying to convince you to stay comfortable, so go into it with that too, is be prepared for the challenge, be prepared to be pushed. And I think that'll help you to help build the mindset. And if you want it bad enough, like I think you'll get to the goal. You just have to not give up on it and be consistent.
And then also you have to make sure you realize when you're becoming sober, like even if you become sober a year, a month, a week, 2 years, 3 years, you're gonna see things that are gonna trigger you. And remember, like, like I'll see people sometimes partying, having fun, and I'm just like, oh man, I kind of want to do that. Like even last night, I was looking at somebody saying like, oh, it's not drinking alone when you're drinking with your dog, and she just had one beer in her room and thinking drinking, and I was just like, I remember like, oh man, I remember how good that felt, just drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette, think by myself, listening to music, thinking about things, having a good time, feeling good, and it brings back
Hmm.
a memory. And I was like, oh man, I want to kind of do that again. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you know you got to have your goals in mind. What does it align with your goals? Does it align with what you're trying to do? So you got to have other goals in life as well, like things that do not relate to being drinking or doing drugs or anything like that. So it could be building a business, it could be building your health. So you just have to be able to focus on what you're focusing on, and that's good for you, and be like, hey, that doesn't align with my goals. Like, yes, I do remember that it was fun, but there was a time and place for that, and that's gone, and it is never going to
Yeah.
come back, because you don't want to fall back into that loop. And sometimes it could be a deathly spiral loop, that you don't want to get into. So just realize that there is going to be triggers, but you got to focus on your new focuses are.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, you can even do something like get into reading books, like get
Yeah.
into a habit of like I want to learn more. So even you can even get books about drinking and all the kind of aspects of it, what it does to you, the psychological aspect of it. Learn to play an instrument, try a new freaking hobby, sports, like anything to get your time away from the drinking or the whatever the addiction is, and into pour that into something else, like to get
Yeah.
your focus and your mind on something else. Because I think that's a big part of it too, like your mind, the triggers, things that, especially for me, it was like the weekend. Oh man, Friday's rolling around. Now I need to go drink, like get into like a softball team or something like that has games on
Yeah.
Fridays. Like, oh, Friday night, excited for my game instead of going out drinking, and just little things like that I think will help you kind of overcome your little obstacles that you're going
Yeah.
to have.
And a lot of people use even religion. A lot of people don't believe in religion, but a lot of people do use religion to help them get through addiction, right? And there was a
Hmm.
meme that was kind of funny out there that said, he's like, the worst part about being a drug addict is that you have to be religious afterwards. Like it was funny. But yeah, so you could even lose religion, or you could even start a community of people that don't drink, like start a little community. And like even, I had 2 DUIs. When I'm in these classes, there's a lot of people that are teaching these people how to be sober that used to be addicts themselves. So that could be like a purpose, have a higher purpose. It could be religion, or it could just be a community, or it could be helping other people go, because how the trauma and the stuff that you went through because of it, that you could help other people, and that could be fulfilling. It could be your purpose. So like something that brings you fulfillment like that could also help you a lot, and it could also keep you clean and sober as well.
Yeah, I've actually heard that too, that talking to somebody that's actually been through the addiction is very helpful, because I've heard of people like, why am I'm taking this AA class, but the guy, he doesn't have a problem with alcohol. He doesn't know what it's like, so that he can't, he knows textbook what to say, but he's never gone through all the ins and outs of actually doing it himself. So finding somebody that's done it, who's overcome it, you just could relate to them a lot better. I think that opens you up to hear what they have to say a lot more. And yeah.
Yeah, and another thing too is, like I always say, like it's one of my sayings, I'm like, if it's important, track it. So if you are trying to wean yourself off of alcohol or drugs or anything, track it. Like track it, like if you drink today. Like, did you drink today, and how many times you did it per month? That's what I did. I used to drink, and I'll be like, okay, I drank 15 times this month. Next month I'm only drinking 14. I have to drink 14 or less. And the next month I'd have to drink 13 or less, like, and then eventually I got down to like where it was just once a week because I was like, I had to drink less. So I would even drink like, oh, I don't want to drink this week because, like next week I want to drink and it's going to bring me over my limit of what I'm tracking from last month. So it's like, or try if you're smoking, like smoke how many cigarettes you did per day. So most people just start getting a frivolous thing like, oh, let me just smoke a cigarette. Let me just smoke another one. Let me just smoke another one. And not even think about, oh, I need to buy another pack. And then they lose track. Keep
Yeah.
track on a calendar. Either you could buy a metal one or you could write on. You could do it on a paper one. You could do it on your phone. You could do it on a spreadsheet or something. Be like, okay, I smoked 5 cigarettes today. I smoked 6 cigarettes today. So now you're tracking it. Like, okay, well, I
Yeah.
smoked six. Now that you can see the average. Okay, in this week, I average 5 cigarettes a week. So next, do 4. Even if you're like 10 a day, next try to do 9. How many hits of weed are you taking per day? Like, oh, I just smoked 5 times a day. Well, did you smoke 5 times a day, or how many did you just smoke a bigger, fatter bowl? And it takes like 5 hits instead of 3 hits. So how many hits are you taking? Like track your stuff and see what you're doing, so you can have some sort of awareness what you're doing and how you're going to better and what progress you're making. Because if it's important, track it.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that too, because last night after we went to watch a band play at like a bar, some cover band, and I did get the urge to like vape. It's funny though that you mentioned tracking, because part of why like I didn't want to do it is like, man, I'd mess up my whole streak. Like I've been
Yeah.
whatever 90 days or 120 days of not doing it. I was like,
Yeah.
if I smoke, I'll have to start from zero again. I'm like, do I want to do that? So
Yep.
it's funny that you bring that up, because just by tracking it, that could be enough of a deterrent to get you to
Yep.
stay on the course. That's funny.
And even if you did it for 6 months, like let's say you didn't smoke for 6 months, and then you took one hit, just one hit of the vape, and then you went another 6 months of no smoking, and you're like, oh well, I've been sober from it from 6 months. But really, you could also say, well, I in the last year I only took one hit, But either way, you're tracking it, you know where you're at, You could forgive
Yeah.
yourself for that one hit, like whatever. But so most of the time, it will put you back on that downward spiral where you get back into it, especially if you tried to quit multiple times and
Mhm.
okay, last time that's why I say through the experience. Like I know that the last 5 times I quit, when I started again, I ended up doing it multiple times. Like I didn't do it for 6 months. I drank
Yeah.
one day. Now I drank another 2 days because I just did it. I ruined the streak. So I'm like, oh, might as well just do it 2 more times. And I know I do
Exactly.
that. So I'm not going to do that this time. So that could be a deterrent as well, knowing, but you do get that through tracking it as well.
Yeah, I definitely had that thought in my mind last night where I was like, "No, you could just take one or just smoke a few hits tonight, like, and then,
Yeah.
don't do it again." And I'm like, "Is it really worth it?" Because I already know myself, and I'm
Yeah.
very likely to want to go buy my own after that, and just then I'll be back to where I'm freaking smoking, vaping every day on the way home from work,
Yeah.
and
So it
I
seems
don't
to
want
me
to do
too,
that.
like you haven't cured your addiction to vape at all, like because you still have those hits. Like, and like if you said, oh, to your wife or whatever, you're I want to take a few hits. You go outside, take a few hits. I'm like, oh, that's all I want is a few hits. But then on the ride home, you're gonna be like, well, I already did it. Let me take a few more hits. Well, now you just doubled it. Now
Exactly.
you just 100. You took 5 hits outside. Now you took 5 more. Now you just doubled what you just did. So you just said you're gonna do that, but now you're did doubled it. So and then in the morning you might do it again. But it seems to me like you just haven't cured your addiction to it. You're still addicted to it, and the synapses or whatever in your brain is still very much attached to it
Yeah.
in certain environments and situations that you still got to work on. Because
Yeah,
if you were totally
exactly.
cured of it, you would be in that environment and just be like, wouldn't even think about it. Kind of like with the alcohol, you're not thinking
Yeah,
last night like, oh, I really want to just have one beer. You just you don't,
exactly.
But with the smoking, you do. So you're kind of still addicted to that, and you still got to make sure you're working on it and don't get off the
Yeah.
track because it's not like the beer versus the vape is two different things, and you're doing good. So you got to keep working on it because you're definitely not cured from it yet.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I think a little bit of me thinking about telling you like, "Oh fuck, I vaped last night." I was like, I don't want to disappoint Aaron either, so maybe
Don't
even
fucking disappoint me.
yeah, even you can add that to your little arsenal to help you to become sober. Like have like
Yep.
an accountability partner where
Yes.
you know have somebody that you value their word and their opinion, and tell that person like, hey, I'm gonna stop doing this, and
Yes. Accountability
I'd
is
appreciate it
huge.
if you try to kind of help hold me accountable, and because I care about your opinion, your perspective about me matters, and then I just looking for an extra tool to add into my belt to help me out in this situation.
Yep, and that's like, accountability partners are very huge too. Like that's a huge piece of advice. When you're sober, find an accountability partner, someone that's doing it with you. Like we're going a health journey together. We're doing this podcast together. So like, yes, you don't want to tell me about your smoking, and I don't like when I go and eat bad. I might have a few things here and there, but I'm just thinking if I continue to do this, I'm going to gain weight, and then he's going to be like, "Oh, you're 190 again. You failed." And like I see your abs, and you're doing good. I'm like, I'm trying to get like you. So I'm like, I know I can't get like that if I continue the pattern of eating bad. So
Yeah.
I'll have a little cheat meal here and there, which is, like you're really on it. So I'm still trying to get to your level. And that's my addiction.
Mhm.
And I'm still trying to I'm trying to, like, you're doing this vape. I'm trying to get the food dialed in, but I'm doing really good, but still got to do it a little bit better to get to your level. But it's also too, it's like, yeah, we have this podcast and that's an accountability. We're out here telling the world health over everything, HOE, living that whole life, and
Yeah.
how bad would it have been if you came on today to the sober podcast and said I hit the vape yesterday? That would have ruined this whole podcast. It would have been you would ruin the whole show.
You're a fraud.
But luckily you didn't, and and a lot of it is because of accountability. So that's a huge piece of advice for people. You got to have accountability partners, and sometimes just putting it out there. You're like, I'm going to put this out there every day, even if it's on social. Like I didn't smoke today. People might get
Yeah.
annoyed by it, but hey, that's your accountability. Find whatever works and do that.
Yep, exactly. I think a lot of people will do that too, like especially the beginning of the new year, put it on social media like new year, new me.
Yep.
So if you do fall off, like that could be your deterrent. Like I'm not gonna let people, I've actually done it both ways where like, yeah, I'm gonna make this change and then, a week later I fall off and I'm like, ah shit, I freaking posted it on social media. Now freaking everyone's gonna think I'm a fool. I can't fucking stick to my guns.
Yeah, and then right
Um,
now Thanksgiving's coming up too, so the holidays are coming up. A lot of people are going back to their hometowns, or they're hanging out with old people, their old friends, their old family members, and that brings a lot of people back into their old habits as well, either with food or any addiction that they have. Like, oh, I'm going back to my hometown to go hang out, and they're hanging out with your old friends, and then boom, now you're drinking again. And it's also kind of
yeah,
crazy too. Almost every holiday is celebrated through alcohol and partying as well. Like
yeah,
Christmas isn't supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be family and all this stuff, but a lot of people use it as a party, but there's almost every holiday, like Labor Day, 4th of July, all this stuff. It's like, oh, time to drink, time to party. So
yeah.
that's another battle you got to get through, is these holidays as well.
Yeah, I don't have it with the alcohol anymore, obviously, but the food thing, I feel, yeah, like you said, I do have my diet pretty well under control. So even my fiance was asking me like, what are you gonna do for Thanksgiving? I'm like, I'm gonna eat whatever's there, but I was like, I'm not gonna overindulge like I normally would.
Yeah.
I was like, I got that little aspect of my mind in check now to where it's funny because yesterday we were driving home and we stopped at a stoplight and I looked over as a Jack in the Box and they have all the advertisements on the window and I'm like, it looked good, and I was like, I remember the old Steven would just fucking go there. I'd get a double bacon cheeseburger, whatever this. They had some new thing. I can't
Yeah.
even remember what it was. I would get that. Like I had no limit to what I would eat, and that's why I ended up getting as big as I did. 248. I was almost 250 pounds. Like
Yeah.
because I had no control. I had no limit to where I would what I would eat. So I think switching it up too by going the route that I'm on can help you just stick to it too. Like you've been eating good for this long, like is all like I've lived this entire lifestyle for years. So to stick to this new way of being is kind of it's challenging, but I kind of like the fact that it's challenging too because I
Yeah.
feel like I'm pushing myself mentally, physically. So I think it all kind of ties into like just feeling better in general. Like I'm doing what I know I need to do, and it makes me feel good. I'm happy with it.
And people get fulfillment through growth. Like that's like when most people are feeling down and sad and depressed, it's usually because they're not growing and they're not doing better for
Yes.
themselves. Like you want to be better than, and that's what a lot of fulfillment is. But just remember out there, people, like sobriety could mean sobriety from anything. Like everything, there's so much toxicity in this world. It could be sobriety from mainstream media. It could be sobriety from eating fast food. It could be sobriety from toxic people.
Yeah.
Obviously the main ones that people do is sobriety from alcohol, smoking, and drugs, but or even opiates or pills. So
Yeah.
any kind of sobriety is good. Like is going to be a challenge. Like because there's so much toxicity out there. There's so much things pushing it. Like it's like the devil. Like they say, like the devil's out there to get you. Like in who knows if it's real or not, but it could be a figuratively of speech, figure of speech, whatever. and all that stuff is the devil, like, and progress and growth is heaven, kind of thing. So it's, you want more heaven in your life, you want more good stuff, you're going to have to get rid of the toxicity and get sober from all these things. And it could be fast food, it could be opiates, it could be pills, it could be just toxic people, which, how do you get sober from toxic people? They're all around. It just, you just get away from the ones that, and try the best you can. But so there's not really a marker for that, but what you're doing and what you got to get rid of. But like, being sober and being healthy and doing the right things for your own personal growth will bring fulfillment. And
Yes.
but going from that, the substances masking your root problems, it's always about the root problems. Like, that's what you're trying to face head on, and that's the challenge, and that's what you're trying to like overcome, is the root problems. Like, why are you drinking? Like, is it because you're afraid to talk to girls? Well, figure out how to talk to girls without alcohol. Or if it's because you suck in bed or whatever, like, well, figure out like how to get better. Like, talk to your partner about it. Like, is it because you have childhood trauma? Like, maybe you have to go through therapy. Like, you got to fix these root problems and not mask them with these addictions.
Exactly. It's funny too that you bring up the devil. It kind of makes me think that anything in life that is easy to get is the devil trying to hand you the bad shit
Yeah.
and just accept it. But anything that's worthwhile, it's gonna take some struggle and
Yeah.
some work to get the good stuff. And that's you can think of it as God, like, I'm gonna allow you to get this, but you have to work for it. Like, it's
Yeah.
not gonna be handed to you. So the devil's here, like, here, take a drink, take a drink, take a drink.
Yeah.
All you have to do is take it.
Yep. That's
And
it.
so that might be a easy way to help you identify what is beneficial and what is not. If it's
Yep.
easy, probably not going to be good for you. But if it's
Mhm.
harder to achieve and harder to get, that's probably leaning towards like an area that you need to travel down and explore a little bit more.
And also, yeah, that's true. That's totally true. I love that. I also thinking just right now, you have been drinking and sober for 3 years almost.
Yeah, 3 years in March.
Okay, so almost 3 years. Um,
Yeah.
2 3/4 or whatever. But if you just took one sip, like you had a Bud Light and you just took one sip and swallowed it, would you be like, I ruined my sobriety, and then just that's it? And so you want another. So you're on year 3, you took one sip, and then year 4, would you be like, well, this is my first year of soberness? Like,
Yeah, knowing me, I
it's
would, yeah,
that's easy to ruin something.
it would start the clock. And honestly, I think I would be kicking myself in the ass so bad that it's not even worth trying to even. I would never even consider having a
So
drink
that's because you
because
willingly did it. So what if somebody snuck in like some alcohol into like a beverage, like let's say, and you just accidentally picked it up and just drank it like on accident, and you're just like, oh man, and drink some, it would just obviously you probably spit it out. But if you didn't, oh, it's
I
ruined
think
because you
I
will.
think
Is it
under
because you
that
willingly did
circum
it?
yeah, I think under that circumstance, I would still consider myself sober and I didn't break my streak.
Because you didn't
Just
willingly
because
do
it
it.
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't a willing thing. I actually
Yeah.
thought about that yesterday too, because I was like, what if I got a non-alcoholic beer from the bar,
Yeah.
but he grabbed the wrong bottle or something and I drank it, or he poured it into a cup so I couldn't even read the label, but it was really a real alcoholic drink. I'm like, I'd be fucking so pissed off.
Well, isn't there some non-alcoholic drinks that have like 0.001% in there?
Yeah, there's actually quite a lot of different non-alcoholic beers now. There's like Heineken makes one. Because back in my day, I think all I remember was O'Doul's,
Yeah, that's what I
and
remember.
now
Near
I think
beer.
every brand has them. Like there's even an IPA, non-alcoholic IPA, and I'm like, my friend had it one day, and I'm like, let me try that. So I took a sip. I'm like, damn, that tastes just like an IPA. Like
Huh,
the
it's
taste is
crazy.
all there, just none of the alcohol.
And then what about, what if you swallow some mouthwash that has alcohol in it? Is that
Hopefully.
considered? Did you just
No,
ruin your
I feel
sobriety?
like that's
Yeah.
different because it's not.
Yeah.
I just don't consider it like an alcoholic beverage. Like it probably make you sick if anything.
People do that in like prison and stuff, like, or like hardcore alcoholics, like they take all the alcohol away from them. They'll go and find like mouthwash and drink the whole thing just to get a buzz. And I'm just like, how does that even get you a buzz? Like, there's so little bit of in it. But I heard that in my like classes that I took,
Yeah,
that people
that's
did that.
fucking nasty.
Yeah.
Like when at what point do you look in the mirror and just be like, man, I have a problem. I'm drinking a mouthwash to try to catch
Yeah.
a buzz. Like get
Well,
control of your freaking mind.
that just goes to the depths of despair of how bad it can get for people. Like some people have it really, really, really bad, and like we had it pretty bad, but there's people that have it 10 times worse. And
Definitely.
I wouldn't even know what to even do or say to them to like to get them to get sober, because some people, like, I didn't even know somebody, like, their hands would shake, like they would literally, like,
Yeah.
they didn't have a beer, their hand would shake, they couldn't talk right. As soon as they get a drink in them, then they feel good now. And even if
Yeah.
it's not like you're drinking a whole thing, just drink a little bit. But it's just crazy, like when you get that dependent, chemically dependent on it, where you could even have withdrawal system the symptoms where you even die because of it. I think that's what Amy Winehouse did. I don't know, but
Yeah.
you could have so much withdrawal symptom that you could pass away from it. And so it's just like that's how chemically reliant your body is in on it. So you kind of like got to wean yourself off of it. But at that point, I would say you need some professional help. You could listen to all the tips and stories that we had in this podcast, but also I think you would need some professional help for that one, because that is, some people just got really bad.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's kind of it makes me like kind of sad too to think about it, like that it has that much control over you.
Hmm.
And I think it's also sad to say too. I think for those people, like a lot of the times you're gonna have to get to your rock bottom. You're gonna have to get into
Hmm.
a point where it's so bad that staying the same is just like no longer an option. Like it has to be so painful that it almost forces you to change. And that also kind of ties into you got to want it bad enough. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you got to get so down in the hole that it's so painful that you can't take it anymore. And that's going to be your motivation to change. Like, I just can't do it because my life's so shitty. It's in shambles. And it's sad to say, but I think for a lot of people, it kind of has to come to that point.
Yeah. I've seen even people that went to prison, like especially with the meth and stuff, because it's a lot easier to go to prison that way. And they'll be like, oh, that's the only time I'm sober is when I'm in prison. And as soon as I get back out, I'm doing it again. I'm like, wait a minute. So you were sober for like a year because you're in prison, and
Hmm.
then you got out and started doing it again? Like, how do you do that? And it's just because, like, oh well, that's just what I know when I'm out here. That's what's comfortable. That's what I do. I have the same connections, the same people. Like, first thing I do when I come out, I'm gonna go hang out with the same people I knew, and they're doing it. So then they're like, oh, let's do it again. So that's what the environment was. But it's like it's just crazy to think like people could be sober for that long and in a different environment, and then come back and be like out of that environment, and then go into their old environment, which I knew and was comfortable with, and just pick it up right then and there again.
Yeah. I think I've actually heard of people doing that, like consciously doing that, like, oh, my heroin, I'm not getting the same highs I'm getting that I used to get, so I'm just gonna go to jail for a little bit, and so my tolerance will go back down. Like
Yeah.
I've heard of, like, I'm sure it's true too. Like I've heard of stories
Oh
of
no, it
people
is.
actually doing that, like, oh, I'm just gonna go to jail and so I could get high again when I get out. Like, what the hell?
And then there's also studies too, like when you have like when you know they're gonna die, let's say someone in Vietnam, they would go in
Mhm.
Vietnam and they would do like opiates and heroin and stuff because they're like, oh, I might die at any second, so they would do it. But when they came back, it's like the opposite of what we're just talking about. When they come back to America and after the war, they wouldn't do it anymore because they know it's like, well, now I know I'm not gonna die and have something to live for, so I'm not gonna do it. But at that point, when I was in it, you're just willing to do anything because you're like, hey, I might die by a bullet right now, so who cares? So it's just
That's
crazy, like
actually
how the mind works in different environments.
yeah, one of those YOLO things. Like, oh, I might as well. I might not even be here tomorrow. I could do
Yeah,
whatever the fuck I want for tonight, or I never even thought about that. That's crazy.
yeah. I heard that study. Like a lot of people. Yeah. So anyhow, is there anything else that you would like to, wrap this up soon here? But is there anything else that you would like to talk about in the sober journey and the soberness, or helping people out, or anything other topics you want to bring up?
Shoot, not that I could think of off the top of my head. I guess to wrap it up for me, I would just saying if you're curious about it, or even if you're struggling with becoming sober, just that's part of the game and part of the process. Keep in mind, it is a process. You don't go from just being an alcoholic or whatever your addiction is to being sober in a day. It will be a process, and it'll be up and down, up and down. Like
Yep.
you'll make some steps ahead, you might fall back, but then you got to get back on the horse and keep going forward. And knowing that it's going to be a challenge, like accept the challenge and accept the fact that you're going to have to become a better human being and a stronger individual to get past process in your life to get forward. It's going to be a battle, and just stick to it. If you give up, obviously you don't get to the end, but as long as you keep trying, you keep inching forward, even if it's an inch a day, eventually by the end of the year or 2 years or five, or even if it takes you 10 years, eventually you get to where you want to be. And I think that's the important thing, is getting sober. If that's your goal, get to the goal. Like, don't stop, no matter what kind of obstacles are in your way, no matter what your mind's telling you, no matter what situations financially or relationship wise happens in your life. Like, just stick to your guns and you'll get there.
Yes, sir. Yep, it is a process. Like I was saying, I've been a processor to 2019 till now, and it's going to continue. It's a challenge. I wanted to quit so many other times, but after each time and each time working on it and each failure, like you learn a little bit more about the process. You learn a little bit more of what you need to do. So it's just you got
Hmm.
to continue it. Like even if you fall off, you're like, oh, okay, I fell off because of why. Analyze it, study it, keep trying. You got this. No matter what, we believe in you. And if you have no one's told you today, we love you, because I saw a lot of people are lacking love, and like hey, we love you and we believe in you, and you could do this. And but at the end of the day, you have to believe in yourself. You have to love yourself,
Yeah.
and you have to do it for yourself out of anybody else. Yes, you could do it for your family, you could do it for your friends or your business or whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to do it for yourself. And just know that when I'm sober, that's when I'm more fulfilled. Yes, it does get hard and challenging sometimes because it might get lonely. You might be missing out on some things. You might be missing out on some events, or you might think you're missing out on some fun. But at the end of the day, it's worth it. It feels great. Like, and then you can focus on other things and build in other areas of your life because you have that time, because you have that that drive and that energy, and it just
Hmm.
feels so much better. And at the end of the day, as long as you focus on some other things that are fulfilling you and bringing fulfillment, it's going to bring fulfillment in your life. And just masking and getting rid of those and working on those issues and those traumas and those everything that you have inside of yourself that you're working on, the root causes, that is what really helps you out and makes you feel a lot better mentally, physically. And even in the beginning, it feels like, oh, this ain't working, I still feel this way. But just know there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you will become the person that you want to be by just keep working on it. But you got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And even those like traumatic experiences, those things are similar to sobriety, where it's going to be a process. You have to process that traumatic experience in that
Yep.
painful area in your life. So
Yeah.
don't expect that to change overnight either. You might have to revisit those painful moments a few times before you're able to process it and then move forward. So
Yep.
just to add a little bit.
And all right, Steven. So how do you like being sober? How does it
I'm
feel?
I'm I'm loving it. Getting the body that I want, energy wise, I feel fantastic. I feel like I'm more present and more there for my son. I don't feel like shit for 2 to 3 days after I'm drinking and have to not be engaged with him. So all around, I feel like it's benefited me in quite a few areas in my life. In my relationship with my fiance, we don't fight, and she doesn't get mad that I'm doing drunk, stupid shit or saying something ridiculous to somebody. So all in all, it's
You're
been
a
a
good
very
example too for
positive.
your kid.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to instill those, like, because especially me and my family, I feel like alcoholism kind of runs in my family. So if I could be the one that stops my son from being an alcoholic, like, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make that happen. Of course, he's gonna have to live his own path, and I'll be there to guide him. But if this helps him not to be, travel the path that I had to, then it's worth it to me.
Yes, and one more thing is we also are good examples of other people. Like our community and our realm. Like people might some of our drinker friends might drink less because of our journeys and sharing our experiences. I know we've already got multiple messages through DMs because of this podcast, through people
Mhm.
telling us that we helped them. Somebody we just said just stopped for a month. Another person said that your dad passed away from alcoholism at
Yeah,
53. That his dad had a heart attack at 53, and it also impacted him as well, and he's trying to stop drinking. So we got multiple messages from other people. So this is why we're doing the podcast, because we know it helps out other people,
exactly.
and like sharing what we know and love, because a lot of people struggle, and a lot of people do get better and don't share it, so it doesn't help other people as much, but it definitely does make an effect on other people around us as well to live a better, more healthier, sober life.
Yeah. It's not like we're not here making this podcast so we could toot our own horn and think that, oh, we're better than you because we're sober, or we don't do this or we do that. Like, we are making this podcast to help other people who are in the struggle, to know that they're not alone, that other people have been through it, and hopefully we are giving those people some sort of advice that will help them in their process and to help them push forward and get to the goal that they're looking after. Like, we're doing it for you guys.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I have family members. I have friends that still do this kind of stuff. And, I think about them all the time. And, I just want to help them. And then also all the people that I don't know that's out there that I know that's struggling, because I know this whole culture is, making people struggle. So, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to bring that light and bring that education to people, because that's where it all starts, with the education and then the mindset change.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, exactly. So learn from our mistakes. That's why we're telling you kind
yes,
of our
it's intelligence.
stories and what happened with us. So if you're going through something similar, like, yeah, use our advice and
Yep. And
get through the struggle.
with that, that's the end of the podcast. And we'll see you on the next episode. Right. That's the end of it.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and share this with a friend that is struggling with addiction, or somebody that's trying to become sober.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Share, 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 share.
See you in the next one.
Have a good one, man.